Today we're doing Lesson 3 of Unit 28 in the language program. We'll start with phonemic awareness and phonics. In this step, we are going to learn the sound spelling patterns for the letters EU and EW. The letters EU can be pronounced several different ways. One way is U, another way is U, and another way is EW can be pronounced oo or you. Let's look and see where these words belong. The word jewel. So EW can be either oo or you. So if you said jewel goes in here, you're correct. Sleuth. Sleuth. The EU sounds like oo. Sleuth. Pewter. EW. Pewter. You hear the U sound in that. Grew. We have an EW, and it sounds like ew. Feud. We have an EU, and it sounds like you. Feud. Maneuver. We have another EU, and it sounds like ooh. New. EW also sounds like ooh. It's just spelled differently. It's spelled with an EW. Neutralize. We have an EU, and it sounds like ew. Eulogy. We have an EU that sounds like a U. Eulogy. Good. Neuron. Neuron. Perfect. Few. Few has that U sound in it. Neutron. Neutron. That's right. We need another box there. Neutron. Neurotic. We put neurotic right there. Eureka. Eureka. Good job. You can see here that the EU spelling pattern is more common at the beginning and middle of words. The EW spelling pattern is more common at the end of words and syllables. Now I'd like you to go through on page 160, and I would like you to type the right words into the correct columns. So we have the words deuce, few, eulogy, pewter, grew, feud, neutron, view, jewel, and new. You need to decide if they sound like ooh or you. Ooh or you. For example, let's start with the word deuce. Do you hear ooh or you? If you said ooh, you were correct. And you would type it or write it in that column. Few. Few definitely has the U sound in it. So we would type or write few in this column. Now I want you to do this page and we'll check it when you come back. Okay, let's check your work. In this column, we have deuce, grew, new, jewel, and neutron. And in this column, we have few, eulogy, pewter, feud, and view. If you made any mistakes, correct them now. The next thing I'd like you to do is to look at page R30 in your interactive text. Let's read these words together. Sauce, cause, saw, straw, new, grew, situate, statue, century, saturate. Okay, now I'd like you to record yourself reading these words and upload it to Google Classroom or send it to me in an email. Now we're going to work on vocabulary and morphology. Your goal here is to learn the meanings of selected vocabulary words before reading the text. I also want you to apply context-based strategies to determine the meanings of words and phrases. So we're going to look in your text connection number 7. This is on page C54 of your interactive text. We're going to look at the highlighted words and we're going to talk about their definitions. So let's go through this together. Our first one is the word din, D-I-N, and you'll see that it has a markup here which indicates that we can find the meaning of the word din in the footnote at the bottom. Number 1 is a loud, persistent noise. Din. Okay. Our next one is bewilderment. I looked at that statue with a sense of bewilderment. And our note up here is number 2. Bewilderment means, if we go down, confusion or puzzlement. Our next one is awe, A-W-E. That's number 3. It inspired awe in the hopeful immigrants. And awe is a feeling of great admiration or respect. Let's go through the rest of these. Our next one is colliding, which is number 4. We'll look at the bottom of the page, and colliding means crashing, hitting against something with force. And as we continue, we see the word brazen right here, not like the brazen giant of Greek fame. And we scroll down, we look for footnote number 5. Brazen means shocking and annoying. And our last one is exiles. It's footnote number 6, exiles. And exiles are deportees or refugees. Back at the beginning, you'll see on page C54, use the clues vocabulary strategies. We're going to figure out what the words Florida and weathered mean. Even if you already know what they mean or you think they know what they mean, we are going to do this strategy so you can use it in the future. Okay, read lines 1 through 9. Well, let's start. My first impressions of the new world will always remain etched in my memory, particularly that hazy October morning in 1907 when I first saw Ellis Island. The steamer Florida was 14 days out of Naples. It was filled to capacity with 1,600 natives of Italy. It had weathered one of the worst storms in our captain's memory, and glad we were, both children and grown-ups, to leave the open sea. We were glad to come at last through the Narrows into the bay. Now, which box best defines the underlined word? The word Florida. Usually you think of it as the state, right? But you can't travel on a state. So it's a ship. Okay, and we're going to reread the underlined word weathered and try to figure out what that means too. It had weathered one of the worst storms in her captain's memory. So weathered probably doesn't mean stormy here. It doesn't mean the weather outside or forecasted. It means survived because the ship survived a terrible storm. Now let's go to the next page, C55. We're going to look at another use the clues vocabulary strategy. Okay, read lines 10 through 14. Reread the underlined phrase clustered on the foredeck. Check the box that best defines the underlined phrase. I'm starting on line 10. My mother, my stepfather, my brother Giuseppe, and my 2 sisters, Liberta and Helvetia, were happy that we had come through the storm safely. We clustered on the foredeck for fear of separation and looked with wonder on this miraculous land of our dreams. Okay, we're going to look at clustered on the foredeck, and we're going to figure out which one best describes the meaning of that. When you see the word clustered, I think of these people standing together on a deck of a ship. So they're not hugging each other. They are viewing the shoreline, but I would say gathered at the front of the ship would be a better meaning for that. Now let's look at the phrase fear of separation. Fear of separation. We clustered on the foredeck for fear of separation and looked with wonder on this miraculous land of our dreams. So they're not motion sick. They're not afraid of the storm, but they are afraid of losing each other. We'll stay on these pages and do some grammar and usage review. Your goal here is to recognize participles and participial phrases acting as adjectives in text. All right, let's review. The present participle is formed by adding ing to the base verb. The past participle of regular verbs is formed by adding ed to the base verb. Some past participles are irregular and their forms must be memorized. For example, buy would be have bought, fly would be have flown, and see would be have seen. A participial phrase consists of a participle followed by a word or group of words that modifies it or receives its action. It acts as an adjective to modify a noun or pronoun. A participial phrase can come before or after the noun it modifies. For example, approaching the dock, the ship clanged its bells. Another example would be the ship approaching the dock clanged its bells. A participle can be part of a verb phrase. For example, have flown. A participle can also act as an adjective. For example, huddled masses. A participle can also introduce a participial phrase. For example, approaching the dock. Let's go back to our text connections, and we're going to look at participial phrases on page C58. We are going to read each numbered underlined section. Check the correct box to indicate if the underlined words are participles acting as adjectives, and we'll write P, or participles in participial phrases. For each item, write the noun that is being described on the line. There it is. We're on page C57, and we see the words scowling and gesturing. They pushed and pulled the passengers. Now, our participle is scowling. Scowling and gesturing. That's also a participle, but they want us to focus on scowling. Scowling describes somebody here. Somebody who is pushing and pulling the passengers. And if we go back up to the beginning of the paragraph, we see that the officers are the ones that are scowling, gesturing, and pushing and pulling the passengers. So for number one, we are going to put an X for the P because it's an adjective. And we are going to write they, like the officers. Because that is what that participle is describing. Okay, number two. Let's find number two. Here it is. With conquering limbs astride from land to land. I think it would help me if I went back up to the beginning. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. Okay, let's look at the word conquering with conquering limbs. Conquering is a participle that's acting as an adjective here, and it's describing the word limbs. So let's write that down here. We will put an X in that box, and we will write limbs. Move it to where it belongs. Okay, number 3. Let's go up here. Is the imprisoned lightning and her name mother of exiles? Imprisoned lightning. Imprisoned is the participle, and it's describing the word lightning. So it's acting as an adjective. Let's put an X there, and we will write lightning. Good. Let's look at number 4. Your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Let's start at the beginning of this, and I'll read this whole thing here. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Okay, yearning to breathe free is a participial phrase. This whole thing is the participial phrase, and it describes your huddled masses. It just means a lot of people. So let's put an X with participial phrase, and we will try to type huddled masses. And number 5, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Teeming is a participle. It ends with ing. It describes the word shore, so it acts as an adjective. So let's put an X there, and it describes the word shore. Wonderful job, everyone. We're going to move on to step 5 now, and we're going to read this selection today, My First View of Ellis Island. This is a nonfiction narrative in which the author shares his recollection of arriving in America by boat. So I want you to think, why would people leave their homes to come to the United States? What do you think they hope to find here? Why would their first view of their new homeland be important? My first impressions of the New World will always remain etched in my memory, particularly that hazy October morning in 1907 when I first saw Ellis Island. The steamer Florida was 14 days out of Naples. It was filled to capacity with 1,600 natives of Italy. It had weathered one of the worst storms in our captain's memory, and glad we were, both children and grown-ups, to leave the open sea. We were glad to come at last through the Narrows into the bay. My mother, stepfather, my brother Giuseppe, and my 2 sisters, Liberta and Helvetia, were happy that we had come through the storm safely. We clustered on the foredeck for fear of separation and looked with wonder on this miraculous land of our dreams. Giuseppe and I held tightly to stepfather's hands. Liberta and Helvetia clung to my mother. Passengers all about us were crowding against the rail. Jabbered conversation, sharp cries, laughs, and cheers. A steadily rising din filled the air. Mothers and fathers lifted up the babies so that they too could see the Statue of Liberty. I looked at that statue with a sense of bewilderment, half doubting its reality. It loomed shadowy through the mist. It brought silence to the decks of Florida. This was a symbol of America. This was an enormous expression of what we had all been taught was the inner meaning of this new country. It inspired awe in the hopeful immigrants. Many older persons among us were burdened with 1,000 memories of what they were leaving behind. They had been openly weeping ever since we began our final approach toward the unknown. Now somehow steadied, I suppose, by the concreteness of the symbol of America's freedom, they dried their tears. Directly in front of the Florida, half visible in the haze, rose an even greater challenge to the imagination. "Mountains!" I cried to Giuseppe. "Look at them." "They're strange," he said. "Why don't they have snow on them?" He was craning his neck and standing on tiptoe to stare at the New York skyline. Stepfather looked toward the skyscrapers and smiled. He assured us that they were not mountains but buildings. They were the highest buildings in the world. Every side of the harbor offered its marvels. Tugs, barges, sloops, lighters, sluggish freighters, and giant ocean liners moved in different directions. They managed to dart in and out and up and down without colliding. They spoke to us through the varied sound of their whistles. The Florida replied with a deep, echoing voice. Bells clanged through our ship. This caused a new flurry among our fellow passengers. Many of these people had come from provinces far distant from ours. They were shouting to one another in dialects strange to me. Everything combined to increase our excitement. We rushed from deck to deck, fearful lest we miss the smallest detail of the scene. Finally, the Florida veered to the left. It turned northward into the Hudson River. Now the incredible buildings of Lower Manhattan came very close to us. The officers of the ship, mighty and unapproachable beings they seemed to me, went striding up and down the decks shouting orders. They drove the immigrants before them. Scowling and gesturing, they pushed and pulled the passengers. They herded us into separate groups as though we were animals. A few moments later, we came to our dock and the journey was over. Let's check for our understanding. Who was the author traveling with when he first arrived in the United States? I know he was with his family. He was with his mother, his stepfather, brother, and 2 sisters. Why do you think Giuseppe mistook the skyscrapers for mountains? Why did he think these giant buildings in the sky were actually mountains? I bet he had never seen the buildings like that before. Now, what did the author see as his boat came closer to the shore? I remember him saying he got excited because he saw the Statue of Liberty. He saw tall buildings. He saw tons of other boats. Good. This is a poem that goes along with the text. So you can look at the pictures down here and follow along as I read it. It's called The New Colossus. Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp, cries she, with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. Now we see down below that this section of the poem in italics actually appears on a plaque at the base of the Statue of Liberty. So it's this part. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, sent these, the homeless tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. So you can imagine that this family, as they come into the harbor in New York, see the Statue of Liberty, and the words on the Statue of Liberty are welcoming to them. So the Statue of Liberty is a symbol to these people that they are welcome in this land. Let's check for understanding. Who is the Mother of Exiles? If you said the Statue of Liberty, you are correct. Who is speaking in lines 73 through 77 of the poem, and what does she say? If we go back to the poem, we can look. 73. Keep ancient lands your storied pomp, cries she with silent lips. Give me your tired, your poor. Yeah, it's like the Statue of Liberty is actually the one talking here. The Mother of Exiles, or the Statue of Liberty, is speaking. She says that all immigrants are welcome. Now, why do you think the poem was placed on the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty? I would say the message of the poem is about welcoming immigrants to a new land. Now let's look at the last step in this lesson. I would like you to respond in writing to questions about my first view of Ellis Island. Let's review. So if a question asks you to hypothesize, you're going to formulate a possible explanation or speculate. So in the first question, it asks us to form a hypothesis about why Edward and his family decided to immigrate to the United States. So you're going to figure out an explanation. Why do you think they came to the United States? What clues from the passage can help you figure that out? Number 2, make an inference about what Edward thought the Statue of Liberty symbolized. When you infer or when you make an inference, oh, that's a nice circle, huh? You draw logical conclusions based on presented information. So you use the information from the text and what you already know from your knowledge to come up with what you think Edward thought the Statue of Liberty symbolized. Number 3, explain the significance of the target word view in this story. When you explain, you express understanding of an idea or a concept. So explain why the word view is important to this story. So just think about how the word view relates, maybe in several different ways. They were viewing from the deck of the boat. They could view the city. They could view the Statue of Liberty. Think about all of that when you're doing this. Number 4, paraphrase the last 5 lines of the poem, The New Colossus, starting with the phrase, give me your tired, give me your poor. So our word here is paraphrase. When you paraphrase, you restate information in somewhat different words to simplify and clarify. So just put the last 5 lines of the poem into your own words here. And number 5, assess the significance of the message communicated in the poem. Keep in mind that the poem is inscribed on the Statue of Liberty. So when you assess, you determine the value or significance. So why is that poem so important, and why would people put it on the Statue of Liberty? Now it's your turn. Go through numbers 1 through 5 independently and write your responses in complete sentences. When you're done, you can submit your work to me. Have a wonderful day.